So we are going to talk about three different topics. First one is that how does JavaScript run in the browser, and if you put it in different parts of the HTML, how does it affect, and what's the client, what's the server, and things like those. And then something called DOM manipulation. So if you for example search here on GitHub, like two things just popped up on my screen, right? The page got updated. So DOM means document object model, and you can update the document using JavaScript. So we will learn about that. And next thing is events. So if you want to have something like when you click a button or you move your mouse over some certain part of the page, you want to do something. So how to do that? So that's the theme, that knowing where to put your JavaScript in the HTML, and DOM manipulation and event listeners. So can someone tell me the difference between HTML, CSS and JavaScript?
So maybe you can comment in two words, like HTML and CSS could be like front end and the other maybe back end, and the other one like also you can say mostly styling, and the other one is like the engine how to control this.
Someone else?
I say like a body, and HTML is like a script of the body, and CSS is like a styling and scheme, and JavaScript is like a mirror and main that can control the body.
Okay. Yes. So bones, skin, and then yeah. Okay, so I am going to use technical words now, not metaphors. So HTML is the structure of the page. So if you look, this is a web page, right? You have opened this in your browser. So if you just, I will open it in Chrome. So if you right click somewhere and do inspect element, you see this part here. All of this is HTML. This is the structure of the page, that there is a HTML tag and it has two children, head and body. Head has more children. So children and parent. So this is children, this is parent, and this is parent of head. And body has more children and they have sub-children. So HTML just means the markup, the hierarchy of the elements on the page, and CSS means styling. So if you put a class, you have styles here, and you can say that use a particular font or a color or background color or something like that, or you can even use animations for some elements. So CSS is about styling the structure. You can render this HTML without CSS rules, but it will look ugly. So if you have to make it, you have to customize the look and feel, then you use CSS. And JavaScript is to update the page or do certain things. It may not be updating the page. You want to react to user events, or you want to update the page when something else has changed without reloading the whole page. So for example, if you go to google.com, if I type JavaScript hack, it suggests some things. So as I am typing, it's sending some data to Google servers and it's getting something back, and based on that, their JavaScript is deciding that now we should show a pop-up with these elements, and if it should be a list, and the part which matches what I have typed should not be in bold. Everything which is the remaining of the text should be in bold, and if I move my mouse, there should be some CSS which should only be applicable if I am moving my mouse over this. So they are doing all this as I am typing. So this is JavaScript. I did something, I got a new page and the whole page did not reload. You saw a loader here, but the whole page did not reload. But if I reload the whole page, it also looks same, right? So they are updating, like the logo moves here and then the whole thing changes. You see an animation, and if you reload the whole page, then it appears here by default at the top and there is no animation. So there is some code which is running in your browser, that's JavaScript, and there is some code which is running on Google server. That may be JavaScript using Node.js, that may be Python, that may be C#, Java, C, assemblies, anything. So that it will depend on their choice of implementing the logic of the server. But in the browser, you can run, you have just three languages, HTML, CSS and JavaScript. So if you want to interact with the page, if you want to change something, you have to use JavaScript. So that's the difference between client and server. So your phone is a client, my Google Chrome browser is a client, Firefox is a different client, Safari is a different client. The client connects to the server. In case of websites, you connect by using the URL. So you know this, like you go to github.com, you say that you want to visit this page, and then your browser will try to find the server for github.com, and then it will load certain things from that server, and eventually you see this page. All of this happens really fast, right? So if you do inspect element, you see a lot of tabs. There is elements tab. This is for looking at your HTML and CSS. There is console to see any console output from JavaScript. You can look at your sources, whatever has been loaded. Then you can look at the network. What is your browser doing as you interact with the page? So if I type H, you see that something like this happened, like it searched, it did something, and then so it sent some data to the server, and then it got something back, and then it's using this data, whatever it got back, to display this updated list of suggested search items. But if I reload this whole page, then it's loading a document. Like if we look at the type, it's loading a document, it's loading Google images, pictures, and then there is no CSS here. But if we load our own page, then it loads index.html and JavaScript. And if you put CSS, it will also load CSS. So, but the first thing it will load would be the HTML file. So you see the index.html gets loaded first and then JavaScript. I'm going to change this to main.js because that's what we will use in the class. Maybe classwork.js. Classwork.js. And I'm going to rename this file to classwork. So if you look at the HTML, we have script tag here, and then let's also add some CSS. What do you type? Text CSS or something? Text CSS. Relation. Style sheet. And then what else? href. I don't do this manually, so it's right? It's correct. So let's add a CSS file called main.css. So now it loads main.css and then it loads JavaScript. And it loads main.css before JavaScript. Because you have put main.css before classwork.js. But if I just change the order, it will load the JavaScript first and CSS afterwards.
So it's always follow the structure of your.
Yeah, so the order in which things get loaded, it will depend on the order you have specified them here. Can I put a script tag somewhere else in this HTML? Will it work? What do you think?
Sorry?
Can I just move this script tag somewhere else? Will it still work?
Yeah.
So let's try. We have h1 and then we have a CSS, right? Let's say h1 and color is blue. So now our text is blue. So CSS is working. If I move my CSS outside,
Should work. Perfect.
it still works. And if I move it at the bottom,
Should work.
but it works in Chrome. Maybe some other browser will say that it's wrong HTML and maybe it will not render it. So if it works in Chrome, you should not.
Works everywhere.
Yeah, if Chrome will fix your HTML for you when it gets loaded, so it will change certain things. But it works, right? And if you load your script here, then also it works. You should put most of your JavaScript, almost all of your JavaScript, just before closing of this body, instead of putting it on head. So the reason for that is right now this JavaScript file is just 240 bytes, but maybe you will use React and then you will install all these libraries and your JavaScript becomes 2 MB. When it becomes 2 MB and you have put this in the head tag, user will not see anything unless everything you have asked to be loaded in your head. So whatever you put here, it means that don't show anything unless you have loaded all of it.
So the best place for it is at the end of the, just before the end of the.
So if, yeah, there may be certain things which you need to load in the head, but like suppose you want to write your code for Google Chrome and like use all the modern features, but your customer is saying that no, in our company we use Internet Explorer, some older versions, and you have to support that, then some JavaScript will need to be added in head, but most of the JavaScript code should be added at just closing the body tag, and you should put them in the order you want them to be executed. So we have classwork.js, there can be some other file also like homework week3.js. So they will be loaded one after another. There is one more reason why you should put it at the end of body. We will learn about it afterwards. Everything good so far? We have a CSS rule where it says that change the color of h1 to blue. What if we wanted to make it green by JavaScript? Very bad color choices. I am not a designer, but let's say we want to do that. So how would you do it? What do you think? Without knowing any of it, if I have to change color of this h1, if you have to do it in CSS, how would you do it? You add a class. So in CSS you can. So right now I have a CSS rule for h1, like for the tag. There may be one way where you use ID or maybe class, CSS class, or you can also go here and say that I'm going to define inline styling and color is red or something. Then it will affect. And you know about the order of CSS, right? if you do something here, it will not, this will have higher priority than what you have said in CSS file. So here you can see on the right side that by default H1 has these properties, and then in the CSS file you have said color should be blue, and on the element style you have said something else. So CSS has priority. So if you change a style of the page, style of an element using JavaScript, it will do something like this. You will not see it in the source code like this, that there is inline styling, but JavaScript is going to use this trick to update this styling. So let's try to do it using JavaScript. So first of all, whenever you are starting a new folder or new project with pure JavaScript, you should make sure that all of your files are getting loaded. So in classwork.js, I have put a console log. I do it every time I am starting something in pure JavaScript, just to be sure that I have not made a typo in anywhere. It's working. So here you see that we have this console statement. Everything is fine. There is a object called document in JavaScript, which means the HTML document, the current document, and then you can, CSS query selector, right? So one way to select it by just saying that give me the H1. So what this will do, it will go and find something in the page which has H1 tag and give the first one. And if you have more than one H1, you can do query selector all. These are two methods which we are going to use: query selector all and query selector. Query selector all will return an array, and query selector will return one object. Yes?
So basically, you say it's going to the first H1?
Yeah, so if we had this H1 and this H1,
yeah,
it's going to first H1.
Yeah, but what about if I need it only for the second one, or only maybe for the third one? Only
Then you have to come up with the CSS selector for that.
That's what we're going to do.
So you can say something like last, something like that. I don't know enough CSS. So, and if you want to read more about query selector, you can go and read about it on MDN, or you can find a tutorial. Here I will just talk about using the API, and if you want to learn more about it, you can just go and read this whole documentation. So if you say document.querySelector and you specify a CSS query, then it will go and try to find out element matching with this CSS query, and it will return the first one. So let's try to log it on the console. It returns, it looks like HTML, right? And if you want to change its style, you can do my heading dot. I don't know which editor you use, but if you use VS Code, you can install some extensions and it will really help you. So in my Visual Studio Code,
No, but which extension would you recommend?
I have to find out. I will send you a list of extensions. I think I have some extensions by default for my development of TypeScript and Angular, so it's doing the magic. So as you see, if I do my heading dot, it tells me certain things. It tells me that I have these properties: inner HTML, text content, style, append child, and inner text, and things like those. And there is so much more. So let's try to update the style, because we know that we want to change the style. And if I do again dot, it again tells me all the CSS rules. So let's say we want to have a background color. What? Really bad. Yellow. See it.
Also the color name or the color coding.
Yeah, you can put.
It's
Yeah,
like,
Yeah, you can put anything.
oh, okay. I thought there is a way that you can give all of this, so when you press color, you can all of this, like CSS.
You can also use RGB. So whatever you can do in CSS, you can pass that as a string.
Okay.
It just takes a string. Then it will go and set. It will go and set background color for this element to this value, whatever you say. And do you know about a function called set timeout? Then maybe we should not talk about it. Yeah, I will not do things which we should not do.
So why then if we can do like JavaScript could do like what CSS is doing, why do we use this CSS?
Why did I do this, right?
Why we just style and
So you should always style with CSS, not do what I just did. I'm just trying to show that you can manipulate the page using this API. So whatever you do in the class, that's knowing what all you can do. But when you write software, you have to follow best practices. So if you work in a team, and you will have rules for your team that how we write code, what is the coding style, and if your code styling means what all you can do, what all you can't do. Maybe there will be so there are automated tools, and we can specify a rule that setting style with JavaScript is not allowed in the entire code base. And if you do something like that and create a pull request on GitHub, it won't make it, like it will reject it. So you can, there are a lot of tools to prevent bad coding.
yeah.
But
and I think it's also good to separate, like, because JavaScript is more like it's you add functions, right? Like to make, for example, to search any song title or something like the functions. But you should not try to make JavaScript as a replacement for CSS, right? So if you have a huge amount of styles in web page or on web app, you wouldn't do it with JavaScript, right? So it's also like, yeah, you have to think about more like scaling.
And I think every element has to have an ID, then if you want to design it using JavaScript, right? Like get document by
Not
by
necessarily.
ID or something. That
Not necessarily you need like with the ID, you can do with class, and
Yeah,
you can do with
one of
the
those
tags,
things.
and but like it depends on what you want to do with the document, right? So it's always good to have separate, like HTML is for structuring, CSS is for styling, and JavaScript is more for the functions of what you want to do with the app, what you want to show on the browser, right?
so yeah, and if you want to like change CSS, then there is a property called class name, class list. So you can add your own custom class in this list. So the right side, whatever I did here, it's styling, right? You can create a custom class here that red background. So there is a CSS class like this, and so in your JavaScript, most of the times you should just use it. You should say class name. If you want to replace all of it, then just have this class. Then you should use this. Then your CSS tool is still in the CSS file. So if you work with a designer, so if you put like lot of CSS in your JavaScript, it would be very difficult to change. Look at it that way also. So if you want,
JavaScript supersedes whatever has been put in CSS.
yeah. So so It's so fast, so it's difficult to see what's happening here. So I will write some code. You are not allowed to ask questions, but I just want to show that how it's working. So I can just put a debugger here, right? Yeah, let's do that instead of using. Yeah. So debugger is a tool for developers. So if you want to pause your JavaScript code, you can just type this debugger. So I have loaded this page and it's stuck here, and it says that debugger has been paused, and if I want to resume the JavaScript, I have to click on this button and then it becomes red. So let's run it again. So if you look at the elements right now, it's just h1 hello world, right? And then you have some CSS rules here. And if I let the next line run, like not pause it, then it gets updated. It has a class. So if I don't put this, it's really fast and you can't really see. I'm just doing this to explain that it's working, and when the page gets loaded, it will have default styling, but then it will go and run your JavaScript, and if you are changing by JavaScript, then that will get applied. So JavaScript is on the runtime. On the runtime means the page has been loaded, everything has been rendered, and you want to do something after everything has been loaded. So you use JavaScript for that. What's the first exercise? So I was trying to change color, but let's do other things also. So this is for changing CSS class. What if you want to change the inner text? You want to say, instead of it saying hello world, you want to say something else, JS updated. So now it does not say hello world anymore. So it gets loaded and then the inner text gets updated. What if you want to put something more, like, so this is simple text, but property name is inner HTML, so you can also put HTML here. So you can say so this is HTML, right? You know this much, that I am adding a hyperlink to Google. So now it becomes a hyperlink. And if I click here, I need to add HTTP. Yeah, so if I click here, it will go to google.com. So you are updating the inner HTML and you are saying you're giving it HTML string, and the browser will update the inner HTML and then it will render it and then it will do more things. So inner HTML is for updating the inner HTML of that element. So there are two things. Whatever is inside this h1 tag, that's inner HTML, and if you include h1 also, then it's outer HTML. Mostly you will be using inner HTML, but there is something called outer HTML, which includes all of the inner HTML but also the tag. Okay. You can create new elements using JavaScript. So you can say a new div or a new image. You can say document.create element, and then you have to give the HTML tag. So let's say I want to create image, and then you can update the image source, and then once you have this image tag, this is something new which I have created. You can say that document dot body dot append a new children called image. So if we do that, you'll get an image. So what is going on? We are creating a new element. The tag of the element is img tag, the tag you would use for the image, and then I am updating the attribute of that element because it's new. You are not writing HTML. You have to just think that you are not writing HTML. You have to create HTML by using JavaScript. So document is called the DOM. This is the DOM, document object model. So there is this page, and there is a representation of this whole page in a JavaScript object called document, and that object has methods like similar to like in array object you have dot includes, on string you have split, and then on array you have map, find, things like those, right? Similarly, document is also just an object, and it's an object representing the whole HTML document, whatever you are seeing right now. And if you want to get something from the document, you use querySelector. If you want to get one element, if you want to get more, you use querySelector all. And if you want to create something new, you create it using document.create element, but it will not be part of the element, part of the document unless you add it. So if I just remove the last line, document.body.append child, it will not show up because you created something in memory, but it's not added to the page. Questions?
Can we see the Java page?
I will share all of this code and video also, so you don't.
No, right now.
Okay. You can also do like, let's say, so I had one, where did I go for GIF? So I copied one URL, right? One image URL. Let's say you had an array called GIF URLs. I'm just teaching everything you need to do the first exercise, and then I will ask you to write code. I don't want to like take a 15-minute break and then do it again. So let's say you had an array, and this array had first string, and then let's copy this one. Now we have three items in the array. Let's say we want to create a new image. For each URL, we want to add an image tag to the page, to the body. So you can write same code but in a for loop. So I'm going to use again that for op syntax because it's so easy. Const URL of GIF URLs, and then instead of src I will just replace it by URL. So what I am doing, for each item in this URL I am going and creating a new element, image tag, and then I am saying that whatever is the value of this URL variable, use that as source, and then once you have done all that, do this, append to the document. If I refresh this, I should see 3 GIFs, right? I had zoomed in, so I just zoomed out. So now you see that they are coming side by side, right? That's the default behavior of image element. If you don't say display block, it will have inline display. So if you want to do that, you can do it using CSS. You can have a CSS for img saying on our page all the images are display block. Then whatever you do with the JavaScript, it will still follow the CSS rules. You see, like all of these things are playing. You can write HTML as a string. You can write HTML in the HTML file, or you can go and write HTML as a string. You can create new tags. You can, and if you add those elements on the page, if there is a matching CSS for them, your browser will go and pick that CSS rule and apply it to it. So if I say that all of them should have a margin and a border 1 pixel solid, then it will have that. Just making it more ugly. Yeah. See, it's not about the look and feel. I'm a JavaScript developer, so I don't know CSS that well. But yeah, so you should know how everything fits together. So if you know that even if you add the element on the page using JavaScript, and there is a designer you're working with, and they're really good at CSS, you can just say that. You can say that I'm going to use a class name, whatever you say, and you do your work in that class name, and I will just change the code here and say that class name is something. Or if there is already a list of classes, because you can put more classes in HTML, right? You can say class 1, class 2, class 3 by space. So you can also do class list and then dot add or remove, whatever. If you want to remove a class, add a class, things like this. So all of it is called DOM API, Document Object Model API. So DOM API includes what you can do on different kind of elements and what you can do with the whole page. Did I cover enough for the exercises? Can you do what? Yeah, I think I have done. So you also create an array of strings with your favorite dishes, like what I did with the URLs, and then can you see it? Not visible, visible. Good. So there is a. You have a branch, class 10, class work, exercises. For the first one, you have to create an array of strings with your favorite food, like all the things you like to eat. And with JavaScript, so you have to also have a UL on the page. You can have a class for the UL, so you can put that in the query selector, or you can just put UL if you have just one UL. And then add the UL to the HTML file and select that with the DOM API. It should be in the reverse order. So you can't select unless that is there. Now loop through each element in the dish array and create an li element. Set the text of the li to whatever you have, right? So similar to what I did with the images. So if you look here, I created a new element. I set some property. So you can set inner HTML of li to the food item, and then I appended the image tag to document.body. But if you have access to UL in the DOM, you can say ul.appendChild. So document.body means it's already there, because body will always be there in the page, right? So you have access to the body of the page using document.body. But if you, I could also do like something like this, my heading. My heading is an HTML element. An HTML element can have a child. Most of the HTML elements can have a child, right? I think all of them. Yeah. You can nest HTML elements. So if you have a UL, you can say ul.appendChild. This is the exercise for the.
We should parallelly be having our HTML, CSS, and JS files separately, but work parallelly open and connected, so that whatever changes.
Yeah, so you have to have an index.html and then a JS file, and they should be connected.
Okay.
And you should put your script tag at the bottom of the body.
So you create a HTML file, and then you add style, CSS, and then you add script.js, like the JS file, and then it will be connected, because you are asking the file from CSS and then JavaScript.
So, just one thing before you start. So I have been saying that you should add your script tag at the end of the body. So let's just try to add it in the head, and let's see if it still works. Here, it did not work. So if I put my script tag in the head, it won't work. It did not work. So then what do? You go to the console. What does it say? It says can't set property inner HTML of null. It means yeah, here I am setting inner HTML, right? And I have a console log. So if you see that console log in line 3 we had console log my heading, it's null. So so what happens when you load the page? So if you put your JavaScript here in head, what the browser will do, it will load the index.html, and then it will look at this HTML, that what is it there in the HTML. What it finds that in the head you have, first it will look at, I don't know if it looks at both, but it will go and look at everything in the head. First it finds CSS, it's a link, it will go and load that CSS and run it. And then it will go and load the next thing. Next thing is JavaScript. It will go and run the JavaScript. And when it's running the JavaScript, it has not rendered body, because it's still at processing head. So, and if you in your JavaScript file, if you are referring to h1 and everything, and you have a code where you assume that document was available, so there is something called DOM is ready. So DOM means document object model. DOM is ready means your browser has looked at the HTML and it knows about all the things on your HTML, and it had created a model in its memory. Like you have a model of, so if I say a house, you already have an understanding of a house, right? That it will have a door, it will have it will have windows, it will have kitchen, toilet, different things. So you know about this. It's a mental model of a house in your head. Similarly, JavaScript has to understand, your browser needs to know what's in the document. If DOM is ready, it means your browser knows about everything in the document at that point of time. So at the point of time when this script is running, if you refer to document, then document is not ready. But if you put this script here and you refer to document, because it's at the end of the body, by the time your browser is trying to run this JavaScript, it knows about everything, because you have put it at the end of the body. But if you put something after this, and if there is some DOM API being used in this JavaScript, it will not know about the element after this. So that's why it's best practice to put JavaScript at the end.
Especially when you have images or any different like assets that you are going to take it from the internet, then it will not render. Like it will work with H1 like the text that is inside the HTML document, but it will not render the images. As you can see that there was like H1, both H1 but no images. So it won't render. So you have to put the JavaScript at the bottom so that all the elements that is inside the HTML will get rendered and then it will show in the browser. So there is like always connection. Like you are making HTML document and then JavaScript and CSS to show it in the browser, right? So you have to understand about how the browser is understanding, how the browser understands the HTML and how the browser understands CSS and JavaScript, right? So that's the most important part, like this, what Conrad is saying at the moment. So, yeah, so, like, do you have any questions, any confusions, or anything that you want to ask?
Maybe when we go through the example.
Yeah, maybe I think so. You guys are ready to do the exercise?
I will just push this code and share the link for the exercise. So,
Yeah.
link is this one. I have to stop recording.
Maybe